Hi, I'm Max, and this is my how-to speech, so let's get right into it. Do you want to keep your loved ones and yourself safe during the zombie apocalypse? Well, I'm going to teach you some tips and tricks on how to defend yourself against the undead, how to fortify your house against the undead, and how to traverse the world that's no longer ruled by the living. The purpose of this speech is if you don't want to be an undead Happy Meal, you're going to want to remember some of these tips and tricks. Like where to go to searching for supplies and where to go to avoid, the undead hordes or any other dangerous survivors, which brings me to my first main point, and this will be how to fortify your house against the undead. And first, I'm going to start with your entries and your exits. You always want your entries and exits to be two separate things, because in the event that your house is overrun by the undead, your entry and your exit are the same thing. That's where all the zombies are coming from. Now you're in a bad spot. Which brings me to my reference of Zombieland the movie. Rule number 8, when in doubt, always know a way out. You always want a different way out than the way you came in. Like a back door, garage door, window to climb out of, anything. As long as it's not the way you came in. Now I'm going to cover how to fortify the inside of your house. And you always want something that like barricades one side of the house, your entry, from another, your exit. And something that only the living or you could get over or through. Something you can jump or climb over, something that the undead cannot get through. And whether it be a first-story home, you just block off a hallway with a couch turned on its side. A two-story home, you just block the stairs. Anything like that, as long as the undead can't get through it, but you can. And now I'm going to be covering how to make your undead experience a little bit more comfy. You're going to want to board up your windows, cover them in some kind, paint, newspaper, anything, as long as you're not looking at the undead and they're not looking at you, because it's pretty spooky. And now I'm going to talk about like earmuffs and noise canceling headphones. Those are pretty important because the sounds zombies make aren't that pleasant, and they never stop doing it. So day and night, it's going to put a lot of pressure on your psychological level, and you don't need that kind of issue dealing with zombies. Which brings me to my second main point: how to combat zombies or even outmaneuver them in the event that you're outnumbered, which will usually happen. A lot of people say, why don't you just use firearms against zombies? Well, firearms are really loud, which will bring even more zombies to you. So I'm going to be covering what tools are going to be the best to use against the undead, which is usually, I think, a baseball bat, a big hammer, anything like that. They could be used because you don't want to be using like blades or knives, because you got to get up close and personal. You got to be precise, and they're really delicate. You want to create as much space between you and the undead, which is briefly covered in The Plague of Days, a zombie novel, pretty good. And now I'm talking about how to maneuver away from zombies. If you can run, jump, or climb away from a zombie, away from their their hands, away from the grasp, you're safe for the moment being, because zombies can't do those three. They can't run, jump, or climb after you, which brings me to my third point. I'm going to be explaining the do's and don'ts of traveling the undead wasteland. First, I'm going to cover the do's. You're going to want like areas that are way out in the middle of nowhere, forest, hills, agricultural areas, somewhere that there's not a whole lot of people and there's a whole lot of things to live off of, wildlife, water, anything, plants. Because the longer you have to fortify your base or something against the large number of zombies in the city, the better off you'll be, which is really briefly covered in this book. This is The Way the World Ends. Great zombie novel for preparing and stuff. And also other areas that are good are areas with unforgiving weather, like really cold or really hot, because zombies cannot protect themselves against that, but we can. And now I'm going to be covering places to not go. Number one place you don't want to go is cities, densely populated areas, because there's a whole lot of the undead, and there's a lot of places you can run, jump, and climb, but there's going to be a point where you can't do that. And suburban areas, dark areas. If you can't see the zombie, you're in trouble. And then lastly, for where you don't want to go is highways, because in the event that you are walking through a highway, there's a lot of abandoned cars and vehicles, which usually will have the undead in them or under them. And in the event that they grab you, you know, they get a hold, they can bite you or alert more zombies to where you are, which could be, you know, a really bad thing, which is, you know, deeply covered in World War Z, a novel by Max Brooks, really good. And so yeah, that brings me to my conclusion. These tips will help you survive whatever the zombie apocalypse throws at you. Whether you need to build a undead-proof fort, you need to dispatch some zombies, or you know, you need to travel the world, the really unsafe world, by being the safest you could possibly be. And brings me to my final thought. Now, zombies are a very, very, very far stretch from reality, but the world as we know it, coming crashing down, becomes a little bit more real every day. And the tips I've told you could use for any type of survival, because it's always you or them. So yeah, thank you.